Hi, today is Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for a new brief. We're doing things a little differently today. We're gonna discuss one major headline and then summarize 3 key points for the week. So what is really going on with Ukraine asking the UN Security Council to expel Russia, and on what basis are they making those demands? A well-known Russian politician has expressed some very interesting predictions for the geopolitics of the world in 2023. And a certain American billionaire chimed in and agreed. Then the front line in Bakhmut is really not looking that great for Russians, and Ukraine is predicted to take another key city. Meanwhile, in Russia, private military company Wagner has just scored itself some major competition. With that, hi, my name is Yulia, and you're watching the Brief Midweek edition, where we discuss everything that happened in and pertaining to Ukraine in this week so far in under 20 minutes. Let's go. If you have been watching my channel, then you know that the Ukrainian representatives to the UN have been calling on expelling Russia from Security Council for a while now.
The Russian Federation that occupied by treachery the seat of the Security Council member in 1991 violates daily not only the Charter but also the provisional rules of procedure of this Council.
I see a lot of confusion as to what basis do they have to make such demands, so let me explain. There are 2 reasons that are currently being cited, an ethical and a legal one. In order for you to understand Ukraine's reasoning behind it a little better, I invite you to watch this United 24 clip that I worked on.
What is Russia doing in the UN? Disturbing the peace. While the UN was created to maintain it, now there is a big crisis in this area. The principal organ of the UN is the Security Council. It adopts resolutions, including ones aimed at countering military conflicts, but permanent members have a right of veto. According to the Charter, these are the USA, France, the UK, China, and the USSR. No Russia. Just as there is no more USSR in the world. At the time of the UN's creation, it included Ukraine, Belarus, and the USSR. After the collapse of the latter, its former republics applied to join. Ukraine and Belarus did not have to do that, because they were already its members. For some reason, neither did Russia. So what is it doing in the Security Council? Vetoing. During Putin's presidency, Russia destroyed the UN's attempts to maintain international peace a record of 26 times. Therefore, Ukraine appealed to the PACE about excluding the Russian Federation. The PACE adopted a resolution recognizing Russia's regime as terrorist, and plans to review its place in the Security Council, as there are much better candidates for it.
So now that you're all caught up, let's cover the ethics. Russia is abusing its power of veto by forbidding the UN to investigate anything that has to do with Russian crimes.
Because if Russia did not violate the provisional rules, then Mr. Nebenzia had to follow Rule 20. Let me quote, "For the proper fulfillment of the responsibilities of the presidency, he should not preside over the Council during the consideration of a particular question with which the member he represents," that's the Russian Federation, "is directly connected."
Which makes it practically impossible to condemn their actions. Another argument for the ethics is that a country that currently is committing a genocide and arguably committed many more in the past cannot be on the UN's principal organ, Security Council. Now, the legal reasoning is a little bit trickier, but that's what Ukraine is going with officially in order to initiate the process of expelling Russia from the UN. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said that Russia is currently occupying USSR's seat at the United Nations. And here is the detailed reasoning behind it. Every member of the UN Security Council had to apply for its position, but Russia didn't. The Russian Federation is internationally recognized as the successor of the USSR and therefore inherited its seat on the Council. As per the UN's laws and procedures, a country can indeed inherit its seat on the Council if its predecessor country did not legally cease to exist. In other words, if the USSR never collapsed and no documents have ever been signed on its dissolution and it was just renamed into Russia, then it would carry a legal basis. Ukraine's argument is that the USSR did in fact collapse, and the documents of its dissolution have been signed by every single member, including Russia. Therefore, legally, Russia is not the same country, and by the UN procedure, it would have to apply and be be granted the seat on the UN Security Council instead of inheriting it. In layman's terms, this process is aimed to prove that Russia tricked the UN into granting them the seat on the Security Council and in fact is occupying it illegally. Despite an extensive amount of evidence, Estonian Foreign Ministry says that Ukraine's proposal to exclude Russia from the UN has no support. The majority of states do not share Ukraine's approach to the issue of Russia's membership in the UN Security Council, so the issue of its expulsion from this body is not promising. However, if you agree with Ukraine's position, you can help make this process a little more promising. There has been a petition created on Change.org that urges the UN to take Ukraine's pleas seriously. And if it garners the necessary amount of signatures, they have to look into it. So I'm gonna leave the link to it in the description of this video, and you can do with it what you will. And let me know in the comments if you think this process is justified. Before we continue, I'd like to take this moment to remind you to leave a like and a comment under this video, subscribe to my channel, and turn on all of your notifications. Thank you. Next up, foreign relations. As I mentioned earlier, a certain high-profile Russian politician has expressed his predictions on Twitter as to what the world is gonna look like in 2023. Dmitry Medvedev, the former Russian prime minister, then president, then prime minister, and now ambiguously a Russian government official, said this on Twitter. On the New Year's Eve, everybody is into making predictions. Many come up with futuristic hypotheses, as if competing to single out the wildest, and even the most absurd ones. Here's our humble contribution. What can happen in 2023? 1. Oil price will rise to $150 a barrel, and gas price will top $5,000 per 1,000 cubic meters. 2. The UK will join the EU. 3. The EU will collapse after the UK's return, and euro will drop out of use as the former EU currency. 4. Poland and Hungary will occupy western regions of the formerly existing Ukraine. I want to make a note here. I'm very curious as to why Russian officials are so obsessed with this idea of Hungary and Poland wanting parts of western Ukraine, while both Hungary and Poland have said multiple times that they don't. And Poland has said multiple times that they consider these territories Ukrainian and have no reason and no desire to even open that Pandora's box. But I digress. Number 5. The Fourth Reich will be created, encompassing the territory of Germany and its satellites, i.e. Poland, which I thought was gonna take Western Ukraine, but okay, the Baltic states, Czechia, Slovakia, the Kiev Republic, and other outcasts. War will break out between France and the Fourth Reich. Europe will be divided. Poland repartitioned in the process. I thought Poland was just gonna take Western Ukraine. Northern Ireland will separate from the UK and join the Republic of Ireland. And if you're American, this one is for you. 8. Civil war will break out in the US, California and Texas becoming independent states as a result. Texas and Mexico will form an allied state. Elon Musk will win the presidential election in a number of states which, after the new civil war's end, will have been given to the GOP. 9. All the largest stock markets and financial activity will leave the US and Europe and move to Asia. 10. The Bretton Woods system of monetary management will collapse, leading to the IMF and World Bank crash. Euro and dollar will stop circulating as the global reserve currencies. Digital fiat currencies will be actively used instead. Season's greetings to you all, Anglo-Saxon friends, and their happy oinking piglets. Now, if you support Russia in this invasion and your reasons are I don't like Ukraine, think about the fact that a high-profile Russian politician just told you, on behalf of Russia as he said, that a civil war in America is a likely scenario and that he'd be okay with it. And then Elon Musk tweeted underneath saying, epic threat. Now, I'm no expert, but wouldn't this be threat to national security? If you are an expert, let me know. Now, I would like to say that this was the most out there occurrence in the international affairs this week, but it wasn't. There were plenty. Minister of Foreign Affairs of Kazakhstan came out and said that they will not be imposing sanctions against Russia as it will harm their close economic ties with the country. At the same time, he assured that they will not be helping Russia circumvent the sanctions. Now, this is interesting because earlier this week, reports came out that Russians have been using microchips from washing machines and other household goods in their military equipment. And while the import of those goods to Russia has significantly decreased with the beginning of the full-scale invasion, largely because a lot of companies just left the market, the likelihood of Russians buying those from the Kazakh market is very high. Now, this statement is also contradictory contradictory to Kazakhstan's previous statement, specifically by their president, that they want to move away from close ties with Russia, such as them refusing to sign the extension of the CSTO agreement. Such flip-flopping, however, is not uncanny because Kazakhstan was in fact incredibly closely tied to Russia in the sector of economy and politics for a very long time, so it'll take a while for them to be able to separate without inflicting harm on themselves. In more positive news, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg expects Sweden and Finland to join NATO alliance in 2023. He's absolutely confident, that's a quote, that the ratification of their applications is going to happen on time, thus confirming that he does not expect Turkey, who for a long time was causing trouble in that sector, to block their accession. In an interesting turn of events, another Russian ally, India, called for a cessation of hostilities in Ukraine. It is worth pointing out that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in a telephone conversation with Volodymyr Zelensky, stated clearly that those hostilities are unleashed by Russia onto the territory of Ukraine and that they need to return to diplomacy. He also expressed India's support for any peace efforts and assured that they are committed to supplying humanitarian aid to affected civilian population. Zelensky in turn expects India to contribute to the implementation of the Ukrainian peace formula. This is not a first time that India is moving away from their relationship with Russia and publicly condemning them while pledging support for Ukraine. While such statements have earned the Indian Prime Minister a lot of respect and support worldwide, Olaf Scholz, German Bundeskanzler, has been criticized in the Bundestag. What for? Lack of strategy on the issue of assistance to Ukraine. The chairman of the Committee on Defense, Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmermann, referred to the slow pace of arms deliveries to Ukraine. According to her, the supply of arms should be planned in advance as opposed to just responding to Kyiv's calls last minute. And it's pretty reasonable given that Germany has been criticized multiple times before for announcing weapons deliveries and then never coming through with them. Italy, on the other hand, seems to have a plan and they're considering providing air defense systems. Such efforts were stated in a private telephone conversation between the Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and Volodymyr Zelensky himself. So let's see what comes out of that. In the meantime, world leaders are reaffirming their strong position on Russia's genocide against Ukraine. Lithuanian foreign minister made a pretty loud and clear statement saying that Russia needs negotiations not on Ukraine, but on their own destiny. If Putin does not come back to reality and if Russia does not come back to reality, there will be no Russia in this new reality. They need negotiations not about Ukraine, but about their own destiny. This comes as a response to Putin's recent address in which he said that Russia is ready to negotiate with all parties involved in the war. Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani followed it up by expressing doubt as Putin's words don't match his actions. And then German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock further reaffirmed Europe's attitudes by saying this: "We must be clear, there can be no normal relations with Russia. Like many Russians, we want to see a peaceful and democratic Russia, which is not a threat to its neighbors. But let's not have illusions. We live in a different reality. That is why the task should be to strengthen our common security against Russia on a permanent basis." These are some of the strongest words and opinions expressed by the world leaders regarding Russia's attempts to renew relationships that I have heard in a very long time. And all of them are pointing to the fact that Russia's blackmail is not working. Speaking of Russia, as a lot of you know, some of the main occupation forces on the territory of Ukraine coming from Russia are recruited by the private military company Wagner, that to this day had no competition in scoring government military contracts. That is until Russian Defense Minister Shoigu created his own private military company, Patriot. Yes, you heard that correctly. Russia's defense minister now created his own private military company. There is not much to say about that except you're the defense minister. You have the entire Russian military underneath your rule. Why don't you just increase the quality of the conditions for them and train them? I actually wonder if anywhere else in the world this would be criminal and prosecutable, or at least considered conflict of interest. Let me know what you think. Anyways, while these two are busy competing with each other, Ukraine is busy weakening Russia's offense capabilities. And it seems like it's working. Engels airfield has been attacked again. Let me remind you, that's where Russia keeps its bomber jets. Ukraine's NSDC Secretary Alexei Danilov thinks it's working so well that he said that Russia is hiding its bomber jets now. Why? Because we can get them. If necessary, everything necessary to make the enemy troublesome will be delivered to the Primorsky territory and the Far East. And in light of these tragic battlefield failures, Putin is trying to make some geopolitical gains. He has banned the sale of Russian oil to countries that have put a cap on its price. The corresponding decree will be valid until July 1st, 2023. It prohibits oil trading with legal entities if the contract uses price cap mechanisms. Exceptions will only be made by special decisions of Putin. In early December, the EU officially set the price ceiling for Russian oil at $60 per barrel, which according to Volodymyr Zelensky is still too high. The G7 countries also agreed to it. In early December, the EU officially set the price ceiling for Russian oil at $60 per barrel, and the G7 also agreed to it. Volodymyr Zelensky then criticized this decision and said that the price was still too high, as setting it at $60 per barrel instead of $30 per barrel would still give Russia $100 billion a year. At the same time, various Western media reported that Russian exports of oil have fallen 50% since the beginning of the full-scale invasion due to sanctions and price restrictions. And on December 26th, the Russian officials themselves, for the first time, publicly acknowledged that they have issues with oil exports. Now that's big, because normally they just say, everything's fine. We're fine. Who's not fine? We're fine. Analysts at the Institute for the Study of War believe that with such claims, Russia is trying to set conditions for Europe to persuade Ukraine to make unfavorable concessions to Russia in order for them to be able to negotiate with the Kremlin, as evidenced by a recent series of advertisements they released that you can find in my previous videos. And this is a perfect moment to transition to our favorite segment, Russian madness. It might need to be renamed to Russian delusions, but we'll figure it out. Russian archpriest Andrei Tkachov advised his parishioners to go to war and die there rather than, and I quote, choke on vomit from excessive drinking or because of a bad selfie, whatever that means. Anyways, take a look.
Воинская смерть лучше всех смертей. Это лучшая смерть из смертей. Люди умирают, как свиньи, захлебываются блевотиной, скажу я вам. Еле-еле пили-пили, перепили, под столы попадали, как бы, значит, обрыгались, как бы, и блевотиной захлебнулись. Вот тебе и смерть. Пошли фотку сделать, селфи какую-нибудь на крышу дома. Подскользнулись и полетели с 15-го этажа вместе с телефоном. Сделали селфи. Таких дурацких смертей – во! Так лучше с оружием в руках умереть за Родину. Как герой, как мужчина. Еще помолиться перед смертью, сказать, Господи, помилуй, и пошел.
And as if that wasn't enough, The Times recently reported that Russia now offers to freeze semen for every man that volunteers to go to the zone of the special military operation. Why? So if, and probably when, they die, they will still have an ability to have children. Only in Russia. What an amazing incentive it is. And now let's move on to why we are all here, Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukraine is preparing security and defense forces for the next year, as it will be decisive. We continue to prepare the defense and security forces of Ukraine for the next year. This should be a decisive year. We understand the risks of winter. We understand what we have to do in the spring, and therefore we understand what results the entire defense and security sector should demonstrate. And then he proceeded to say that the occupiers are using all resources available to squeeze out some advances. And his words were further confirmed by the Institute for the Study of War. Their analysts suggest that the Russian attempts to capture Bakhmut are coming to a culmination, and not a good one. AKA similar to how it was in the Kherson region in August. And as you remember, the armed forces of Ukraine retook almost the entirety of the region in a blitz, in what was then deemed to be one of the most successful counter-offensive operations in modern warfare to date. The ISW further notes that the occupiers' troops have noticeably degraded and they lack personnel and ammunition. Piggybacking of that, the press center of the Defense Forces of Ukraine says that they see no signs of the enemy forming a strike group in Zaporizhzhia sector. New minefields are being created, engineering positions of equipment is being carried out, etc., etc. This indicates that the enemy is rather preparing for positional defense, not offensive operations. And to make matters worse for Russians, the New York Times dropped a bombshell article detailing why they think that Ukraine is soon going to be able to return Kreminna, a key frontline city in Luhansk region. And the British intelligence agrees with them. According to their data, the Russian troops are strengthening their defense lines there. And if Russians lose Kreminna, that is going to open pathway for Ukrainian army to liberate Lysychansk and Severodonetsk, very important industrial centers of Donbass, which have been occupied by Russia since a grueling beginning of summer campaign. As Zelensky said, Bakhmut, Kreminna, and other areas in Donbass require maximum strength and concentration now. The situation there is difficult, painful. The occupiers are spending all the resources available to them, and there are significant resources to squeeze out at least some progress. Because realistically, if they're pushed out of those locations, we're gonna see a domino effect. And to guarantee that victory comes as soon as possible, Ukraine is developing air-to-air drones that can combat other drones, such as Shaheds and Kamikazes. The Minister of Digital Transformation, Mikhailo Fedorov, is confident that in February/March, the situation with drones on the battlefield is going to change dramatically. In that regard, Ukraine has nothing but positive outcomes to look forward to. But before I go, I'm unfortunately gonna have to leave you on not such a positive note, but it's important information that I feel like needs to be known. Demographers predict a catastrophic drop in birth in Ukraine in 2023, which will in turn create a large risk that by 2030, the population of Ukraine will be reduced drastically. Here's a quote from the director of the Institute of Demography and Social Studies in Kyiv, Ella Libanova. "I dream that by 2030, there will be 35 million of us. Unfortunately, this may not happen. Because the war continues, we're losing people due to excessive mortality. These are not only the dead, but also those who die due to the stress, overload, poor nutrition, lack of medical care. We do not yet fully feel it, but 2023 will be the year of a catastrophic drop in this indicator." That's a staggering prediction to hear, as our country started with a population of 45 million people in February 2022. And with that, that's all I have for you for today. And if you've made it this far and you liked the video or found it informative, please don't forget to give it a like, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel, turn on all of your notifications so you don't miss when the next video comes out, and I will see you on Sunday. Actually, wait, Sunday's New Year's. So I will see you on Monday? Tuesday? I will see you soon. I'm talking to the camera!
Oh, close the door!
Disregard everything I say!
Close the door!
I'm already sitting down!
Oh my god.
It's hard to get out of here!